back. Hope you're having a good day. I'm going to trim up 3 ports today, and I'm going to repot the last one. This one's in good bonsai substrate, so I know it's a cutting that I've had in here for less than a year and a half or so, because up until then I was just using potting soil for these all the time. I can see, you can see a little bit of a splitting in the trunk. I do want to allow it to get just super pot bound in here, and hope that next time I go to repot it, it'll have some nabari when I go to, expose some more of the soil down there. But for now, I'm just going to trim it up a little bit. Kind of under the impression that I might have taken this out of my group planting that I had, as I had a bunch of them that just got too big for it and were kind of falling off the edges. And it looks like maybe when I put it in here, I chopped it, and then I've just kind of let it go since then. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of come in and downsize it a little bit, and then try to take a little bit of a closer look at any branches that I just don't like or anything like that. I may even just downsize it some and don't do anything else. But, I can already, even just as I'm doing this now, some of these that are growing towards each other, try to take out. It's a pretty good sized branch there, going into the middle. Some downward growth. Some downward growth there. I know I've got a good example on one of the other trees. This right here is also another good example of where, when I cut it, I didn't cut it right next to the branch, just to, because the ports will die back some, and you definitely don't want to die back into the branch. And it actually sprouted another one. But that's the callus that wound up coming off there. Like, if it didn't sprout that branch, that callus would just come up off there. And then now, I think you guys might even be able to see that pretty well, that's now not looking as quite as an obvious of a scar. Of course, now that if I'm going to leave that on there, that'll continue to improve. Starting to look a little bit better. And let's see, still got a little bit of downward growth. Some of that awkward stuff too. It's got an aged look to it. So I'm thinking that perhaps that'll be the front one day. Leave this on here, try to gather up, create a little more taper. Goes into the apex, has a nice back branch here. And a little bit of a slingshot there, but I think that'll be good enough for the day for this one. Still has a long way to go. I said it is starting to look like it's got a little bit of age. Once it sits like this through the winter and then starts gathering up that spring momentum, should actually start to get some real potential to it. All right, here is the second one. And this one I'm going to get a little more drastic with, I think. So you can probably see that this had a main trunk heading that way, and then it had this other branch coming this way. And I had originally chopped this and left a nub for the dieback, and that's another spot where I got a branch instead of it dying back. I'm definitely taking that off. And you know what? That's just another, I'll just leave that there again. If it gets growth out of there again, no big deal. But I'll leave a little hunk like that on there. And then that part's kind of going awkward there. So then I think what happened was when I chopped that and I kind of, when that came out, I let everything else go. And, I was looking for the movement this way. And I think I've kind of let it go a little bit, got a little bit too leggy here or whatever. And so what I may actually do is go ahead and just do a cut like that for some massive taper on there. Last time I had a cutting of that size, when they start to shrivel up, they actually get a little bit skinnier. But I'd actually let it rest just like this, and I nestled it into a pot. It actually had a succulent in it that had died, and so what I did is I just left this sit out for a little while, and I let that callus over, and I just let it rest there or whatever. It seems to be growing. It's growing really weak, I think, because I just had it resting and didn't have it buried in there a little bit to keep it from toppling over. But since I got some low growth on there, I may try to do the same thing with that one. All right, and then we got our last victim of the day. And this is the one I'm also going to repot. I'm going to repot it because this actually may be one of the first cuttings that I ever took, because I think it's been in here for quite some time. And it's got a decent nabari, small, and even though it's been in there for a while, I think that this was just a less than pencil thin cutting probably 4 or 5 years ago. I said I had some ports before I even was into the bonsai hobby, which I started 3 years ago. When I watered them the other day, it's been a couple months at least since we've had any really reasonable rain or anything. So a couple weeks ago I did go to water my ports, and I watered it, and then I walked by and it still had water sitting in here, and then I even made like a couple more trips and it still had water sitting in it, and I went and looked, and there's nothing obstructing the bottom or anything like that. It's just really just a solid brick of peat. This is another case of where I did a big chop and then it got some growth out of there instead of just dying all the way back. But you guys can probably barely see that there is some crustied up stuff there. I'm going to try to take that off, and that would be the part that would just fall right off one day without the growth in there. But you see it got the growth and it came off anyway. And then I think I will leave that just to encourage some more healing and also lower growth. And then what I'm going to do, just because I know I'm repotting it, just going to cut a couple inches off of everything from the top. That's actually another example of some growth coming out of where I had previously had a chop. All right, here we are ready for the repot. But anyway, it's small. We've got 14 warm days coming. I'm not going to bare root it like a ficus or anything, but I do want to try to get as much of this peat off as possible. And there we go. Not quite as densely, oh no, it is every bit as densely packed as I thought it was. So with succulents, there's really no reason for it not to be draining other than maybe just too many roots in there. There was a lot of roots on the bottom. I don't know why it wasn't draining like that. But anyway, summertime, wintertime, whenever, I never bare root a succulent or anything. If you ever, and whenever you do, you know, I mean, this is just my advice. I mean, you can find so much conflicting advice on the internet. I advise actually, anytime you do any kind of work, you look at like 4 or 5 sources and just kind of pick your best or whatever. But anytime I do anything close to resembling root work on a succulent, I always let it dry out before I water it. I let it sit for at least a week, or I wait till I start seeing new growth off it before I water it, just because the damage to the roots is where the rot can set in, and they will take the water that's in the leaves, and that'll force it to grow new roots. And then once it grows new roots, then you no longer have the damage there because it's got new growth off of it. I don't bare root them simply because that takes the water hose, and I definitely don't want to get it that wet. But I will keep this in a covered area just in case it rains. It's not supposed to for a while. It's supposed to be warm for a couple weeks, but no rain. It's actually very nice. It's supposed to get a little more humid next week, which actually I kind of like anyway. So even just pulling that, all that was just dry dust. That was about a week ago that I watered it and it didn't drain. I guess it was packed in there pretty well. But for most of my ports, it does have a decent nabari, which has me with the idea that it was in there for quite some time. I know it had to have been at least 2 years. I'm going to guess about 4. Yeah, that should do it. I'll put it in a protected area for a bit. And with common, with the ficus or almost any other tree that's not a succulent, the reflex is to want to water it right away. And you see some people that will say that they do that, with their ports, and they're like, oh, I do it right away and it doesn't miss a beat or whatever. But I think it is best to wait. I've lost a couple regular jades, and I've actually lost some desert roses and some aloe from doing too much watering with some open wounds or whatever. Haven't really lost any ports that way, and I did make those mistakes a lot right at first. But either way, I'll leave it like this. All these leaves will shrivel up. I'll start seeing some little tiny growth, kind of like you got right there, but I'll be seeing it in different places or whatever. And then when that happens, I'll water it. And I would like to keep this one nice and small. That's why I kept it in the small pot. But it does have some age look to it and everything, so once it starts branching out again, it should look pretty nice.